is my dad, Steve Watson. What country did you immigrate from?
I immigrated from Scotland.
Whereabouts in Scotland?
I was born in Johnston. We lived in Paisley, which is just located just outside of Glasgow, which is the largest city in Scotland.
What were some of the things that made you want to leave Scotland?
Well, it was my dad's idea to immigrate. At the time, the economy of Britain wasn't very good, and he had a young family, and he felt that he could maybe make a better go of it elsewhere.
How did your mom feel about that?
Well, her side of the family was not too happy about it because they were pretty close-knit, and they really didn't like the idea of my dad taking their daughter and their grandchildren off in a strange country. But my mom, I think, felt in the end that she should go with her husband, and that's what they did.
So why did you want to come to Canada?
Well, he explored several opportunities. He looked at Australia as well. He could have been a little Australian. However, Canada, there were some companies that were advertising for the job that he was in his field of work, which was he was a draftsman.
So you had experience in the job?
That's right.
What year did you come to Canada?
We came in 1963.
How old were you?
I would be around 3 years old.
What about the rest of your family?
My parents would be in their late 20s. I have a sister 1 year younger, another sister 2 years younger.
Did you come to Canada in a group or alone?
Well, my dad came by himself in April of '63 by plane, and then we followed in August by boat. Well, on the boat there was a lot of other people.
But did you know any about them?
Well, we probably met some on the boat, but it was basically other families, maybe immigrating, maybe some were taking holidays. A lot of people took the boat back then over flying. Our voyage was 8 days across the Atlantic Ocean, and we landed in Montreal where our dad met us there.
Being a 3-year-old, 8 days must have seemed really long.
Well, I vaguely remember images of the playroom, nursery, whatever you want to call it. We stayed in a cabin, my mom and my 2 sisters and myself, and vaguely, again, recalling the dining hall as well.
So describe your journey from Scotland to Canada. Like, I know the 8 days on the boat, but...
Well, we finally got to Montreal. That's where my dad met us. There was a strange thing that happened there. My sister Caroline, who's a year younger, we lost her at the pier. Didn't know where she went. In fact, they were very concerned that she went overboard into the water. Then suddenly a taxi driver in the streets of Montreal came in with a little girl in hand, and it was my sister. And the reason that he had thought she was from the boat was because she was wearing a kilt, because we all arrived in Canada wearing a kilt. So he knew that the boat had just come in, so we managed to get her back safely.
So that must have been a pretty extravagant start to Canada for your mom.
Yeah, it was a little harrowing to say the least, yeah.
So when you first came, did you settle in an urban or rural area?
We settled in a town called Galt, which is now part of what we call Cambridge today. So it would be a small urban area.
Were there any obstacles or roadblocks you faced on your immigration?
Well, I suppose just getting here and trying to find a place to live. My dad came here, he only had about $100 in his pocket, so it was trying to find...
You didn't have much money.
No, we didn't, and so it was trying to find a place to live and get your life started. At the time, there was only three children. We eventually had 3 more.
So I know you're only 3 years old, but did you find a way that we speak different than how you spoke at the time?
I was too young for me to remember that. I know I must have had an accent because I've since listened to younger cousins of mine, and I've heard their accent at 3 years old, so I must have had one. But I think I lost it by the time I was probably going to school, 5 or 6 years old. My parents kept theirs for a long time. Now if you speak to them, this many years later, they are Canadianized now. They use a lot of words that are like yeah instead of I.
What do you mean?
Well, instead of calling something little, rather calling something wee, they'll call it little, just like Canadians do. The only time their accents seem to come back is when they get visitors, family visiting from Scotland, and their accents seem to come back again.
Did your family have a stern plan going into Canada as to what they were going to do and how they were going to live?
I don't think so. I think it was a matter of just trying to feel their way because they didn't know a lot about the country. All they knew was that they'd get there and they felt there was opportunity.
Do you remember the first person you met when you came to Canada?
I don't remember the first person I met. I do remember the first friend I can recall, and that would be Jimmy Simpson, who lived behind us. And we played around for, we were 3 or 4 years old at the time, I guess. I eventually met him later on in high school, 15 years later. But we settled in with a lot of other Scottish immigrants who lived in the town, and we joined social groups, a church, a Presbyterian church, which is a lot of Scottish people attending.
So you felt very at home, like you didn't feel like an outsider when you came?
Not really, because there was at that time a lot of British people immigrated to Canada during the 60s. So, and British people had a lot of the same rights automatically that a lot of Canadian citizens have. Right away, my parents could vote, even though they weren't Canadian citizens.
Do you find yourself carrying on any Scottish traditions now, even?
Well, yes. Growing up, we were attended something called the Burns Club, and that was a social group, a social gathering for Scottish people, immigrants, and named after Robert Burns, national poet. He's the guy that wrote Auld Lang Syne. You sang New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to a lot of different parties, dances, that kind of stuff. Of course, the church, a lot of Scottish people there. And every New Year's Eve, we always toasted Scotland. My parents would get out soft drinks for us kids, and they'd have a glass of sherry each. And at 7 o'clock, we'd toast Scotland. Something we still do sometimes, right? And there was a program on the radio called Calling All Britons. And that was a program a lot of British immigrants listened to, just to sort of get a feel for what was still going back on in the old country.
So, over this whole experience and living in Canada now, would you say you prefer Canada or Scotland?
Well, to live there, Canada, definitely. It's my home, and I think there is a lot of opportunity. Scotland's a fantastic place to visit. I've visited relatives. We've kept in contact with them. They came over to visit us here. We came back. We went over there to visit. And Scotland's a fantastic country to visit. Really friendly people. Beautiful scenery. Just a really wonderful country. But to live, this is my home.
So you would never go back to Scotland to live?
No. I remember Bakery the Dining Lounge as well.
Oh, wow. Hello, this is Steve Watson, my dad. So, Steve, hello, this is my father, Steve Watson. So
Maury, I'm not the father. I'm not the father.
Hello. Hello, this is my father, Steve Watson. So, Dad, we're country... Oh, my God. Hello, this is my dad. So, Dad, what... Oh, my God.